First off, shout out to Alex, who requested a character ranking video for House of the Dragon Season 1. Great idea! The fun can continue, even though we're a ways off from Season 2. Officially, they've said don't expect it until 2024, but I hear they're really trying to get it into Q4 2023. Fingers crossed! And for this video, I decided to make it a top 10 characters of Season 1 because there are so many characters. And I decided also that even though they swapped out a lot of actors this season for each character, as time raced by, I'm still counting all versions of a character as a single character. I almost did 2 versions of Alicent and Rhaenyra, but I just didn't think it worked. So I'm considering them again as whole characters. And also spoilers, of course. So if you have not yet watched all of House of the Dragon, what are you waiting for? And then come back and watch this ranking video and share your own rankings down below. All right, so number 10, Sir Otto Hightower, played by Rhys Ifans. Considering the caliber of this actor, he along with Matt Smith was supposed to bring star power to this show, and I guess maybe Olivia Cooke too. But I'd have thought this character would be higher up on my list, and while his schemes have had huge consequences, he did put Alicent in position, he himself hasn't really been making an impression. Just the other day, the internet asked who was more cunning between these two scheming dads, and I agree, Tywin Lannister is not only more cunning, but makes a much grander impression thanks to Charles Dance, who's just pretty grand himself. But if you saw The King's Man or any of Rhys Ifans' previous roles, you know that he's capable of making a strong impression as well. Yet here, the one time he's on like the biggest show or movie of his life, he decides to go for understated? Sir Otto Hightower also seems to be a relatively normal dude, except for the times that he creepily compares his daughter to his late wife. And I think that being a relatively normal dude never helps on Game of Thrones. Number 9, Corlys Velaryon, played by Steve Toussaint. Another character who I'd hoped would be higher up on this list because things started out so well for him. He was on the small council throwing shade left and right. Him refusing a drink became a meme I saw on social media, very funny. Who can forget his thrilling secret conversation with Daemon Targaryen and that line about second sons? Or trying to get Viserys to marry his extremely young underage daughter. And standing by his wife's side, seemingly more upset about her being the queen who never was than she was. I guess when you marry for position, as Corlys has been very transparent about, not just for himself but his children, it's a bummer when that spouse doesn't achieve the position that you married them for. You know, never marry potential, they say. Corlys should have t-shirts drawn up. Even on the battlefield, he was overshadowed by Daemon, and some really uncool helmets, by the way. I felt bad about that. And then he got injured for several episodes and disappeared. What the heck? House of the Dragon has got to do better by House of Velaryon, especially since they decided to also have this house fly the banner of representation, and they've done just an awful job with them. Corlys has a lot of charisma too, so this should be a more important house, and Corlys should have better storylines. They're a key player in the upcoming Dance of the Dragons, but they were supposed to be a key player already, so it's no guarantee. All right, number 8, Lucerys Velaryon, played by Elliot Greyholt and Harvey Sadler. Now, the young Sadler wielded a blade quite convincingly, the anger for such a small babe, and sympathetically told his fake grandpa he'd rather have his family members alive than inherit Driftmark. That was with his cute little toy giraffe next to him. That was adorable. Was that a giraffe? How does he even know what a giraffe is? All right, so anyway. Lucerys is on this list, though, because of the thrilling end sequence in episode 10, aka the season finale. With hardly any words, Greyholt, a child actor, was able to do an incredible job portraying someone who is obviously too young for battle, but brave enough to step up once he found himself in that position anyway, and honor his family, his house, and himself. Lucerys didn't beg for mercy, he didn't cry or feel sad for himself, and therefore died a more heroic death than many men on this show. I mean, it was incredible. He went out like the prince that he was. And it's a performance, I think, that will be seared in all of our minds. Who would think that him going up against Aemond, which just kind of goes to show you how that scene was written, and maybe not as good as it could be, but going up against Aemond, he would be the cooler of the two. Take that, eye patch. If only Lucerys had said, I'm not at all sorry about your eyes. He went down. All right, number 7, Rhaenys Targaryen, played by Eve Best, thanks to a killer dragon, Meleys, who made quite the entrance in episode 9. Although, as I've said before, I think it was great that so many people commented on all the civilians that she killed, which just goes to show, I think, how society is changing, because I think for almost every other show before this, people wouldn't have really talked about that too much. It was pretty bad. And I hope that the writers took note of that. Especially because we never really see except for Mysaria, we never really see the perspective of the people on these shows. But anyway, also, there's a pretty awesome meme of her from behind the scenes that's making the rounds all the time. And so Eve Best has made a very strong impression on this show. What a great picture. What a great behind the scenes shot. That was fantastic. It just goes to show, if you're an actor, always be on, because you never know what's going to hit. Even a behind the scenes pick. Also, while it highlights a failure, the Queen Who Never Was is still a pretty cool moniker. It sounds awesome to me. It has such intrigue to it. It sounds very cool. And it's also cool that instead of allowing that turn of events of her being passed over for the throne to make her bitter, and she was a little bitter, in her first conversation with Rhaenyra on that balcony, but she's learned to try and make sure just that the next generation of women succeed where she failed. And she doesn't care who it is. She just wants a woman to be on that throne, backing Alicent and Rhaenyra at different points. And that's great. Women supporting women. I think it's great. I think it's really well done here. And it makes Rhaenys an interesting character. Number 6, Sir Criston Cole, played by Fabian Frankel, or as I have dubbed him, Sir Fatal Attraction. Yeah, this guy's nuts, having spent one night with Rhaenyra, yet still upset about it over a decade later. I know he broke an oath, and it was he changed his whole view of himself, but come on, how is his anger still so fresh? It's because he's crazy, I'll tell you. But on a show, you need characters that are crazy, that are nuts. And I think that Fabian Frankel not only supplies that, but to his credit, makes Cole's madness believable. You're like, that guy's nuts, not like that character's poorly written. So that's an important distinction. He is Alicent's extremely loyal mad dog, and perhaps because of him and Larys Strong, that's a big part of why Otto Hightower is having trouble making an impression. Who can compete with these two weirdos? By the way, they might be embarrassing, but they're extremely helpful to Alicent and give her independence from her father, which also I think hurts that character. Larys Strong almost made this list, by the way, and I'm curious if he made any of your lists. That foot fetish was something to remember. But he still hasn't really come into his own yet, which is disappointing because he showed such potential there for a moment with his B squad. And also he has competition from Mysaria as to who is this show's Littlefinger. I don't think either of them have cemented that legacy yet, even though this is a prequel show. All right, so number 5, Aemond Targaryen, played by Ewan Mitchell and Leo Ashton. Ashton did a very nice job in episode 7. From making Vhagar his own, that was an incredible sequence, to losing an eye to the Strong brothers, and being man enough to own up to the consequences for his actions. He's like, it's fine, I got a cool dragon out of it. But he was lying, because he's never gotten over it. Which is weird, because the eye patch does so much for him. I'm like, you came out on top, Aemond, let's go. When Ewan Mitchell showed up in episode 8, Aemond suddenly became one of the coolest characters in Game of Thrones history. A man in black with long silken hair, that eye patch, who's quite cunning and skilled with a blade, and coveting his brother's throne. Daemon 2.0 as an improvement? It sure looked that way, except for his Achilles heel. Anger over losing that eye as a child. This weakness, which led to his now accidental killing of Lucerys, it makes Aemond slightly less cool, which is worrying because he has so much potential as a character. So let's hope that he gets his wits about him and becomes the cool character that he should be once more next season. Number 4. This might be controversial to some of you, but this is where I'm putting Renira Targaryen, played by Emma Darcy and Millie Alcock. Now, yes, when she was played by Alcock, Rhaenyra was one of, if maybe not the coolest, but she would certainly have been higher up on this list if Millie Alcock had played the role throughout. She reminded many of us of fan favorite Daenerys Targaryen, and she was angry and passionate. She was making waves. It was fantastic. But when Emma Darcy took over the role, this Targaryen ironically lost a lot of her fire, becoming more like her father, yet not as complex. To me, the older Rhaenyra's hesitation comes off as indecision and often whining. How am I supposed to root for her to be queen if I know deep down, thanks to that late night confession, that that she doesn't even really want it anymore. She's like, it's too hard, Dad. I mean, it was a good scene, but, I kind of took away, I think, some of Rhaenyra's coolness. Nor does she show the qualities and capabilities of a good queen. I know some of you think that she does, but I don't agree. And I think she's actually a pretty bad mom. And also, she's been pretty callous with the men in her life. But still, she's central to this story, and a sloppy character is certainly still an interesting one. And she often benefits also from some very cool cinematography. So she's still number 4. Top 4 is very good. Number 3, though, Alicent Hightower, played by Olivia Cooke and Emily Carey. She's higher than Rhaenyra on this list. Isn't that fascinating? I think that it's really also interesting that the simpler and quieter of the two when this story began has morphed into the more complex of the two. Something I would hope that Rhaenyra, I don't think one has to be better than the other. I wish that Rhaenyra was at the same level as the development of the Alicent character. Emily Carey, while Millie Alcock shined, Emily Carey did a wonderful job showing how fast Alicent had to grow up when she was betrayed by both her husband and her best friend / stepdaughter. That was great. That was really wonderful. Emily Carey showed those nuances quite well. And so is Olivia Cooke as the older version of Alicent. She does a wonderful job showing a woman who is in over her head and really doesn't even really want to play this game, yet out of sheer will, because she has to, manages to stay in the game still. I think it's great, and make a lot of choices and alliances that she doesn't feel good about, yet she does them anyway. Isn't that interesting? Wait till you see my number 1. But I think it's fascinating how it's reversed from what I would have anticipated at the beginning of the show. So anyway, it's also interesting to have a character who has such an ethereal, loving quality to her. Who can forget when she stood in front of her loser son to protect him from Malice, right? But she also still does such dark deeds. Complex character indeed, and therefore fascinating. Number 2, we're getting up there, Daemon Targaryen, played by Matt Smith. I would have thought for sure he would have been my number 1, for sure. And now you know who my number 1 is, who we'll talk about in a moment, but I had to put him at number 2. Matt Smith, though, is the bad boy of House of the Dragon, a spoiled brat who's often right, though, which is great. To see him mature yet not lose the qualities that make him so appealing has been fantastic, and I wish we had the same with Rhaenyra. Although it is interesting, as I've said in my last breakdown, to see him to think he was marrying himself to suddenly being married to his brother. He definitely commands the most interest amongst fans and brings star power to the show with his previous work, which everyone also loved, on Doctor Who and The Crown. Plus, he almost always has a dragon around him or something interesting happening. As the internet loves to point out, Daemon is all about drama with a capital D, which makes him a fantastic character. But still, even with all that, my number 1 is Viserys Targaryen, played by Paddy Considine. Wow! Daemon might supply the drama, but Viserys gave this show heart. And to think, at first we all laughed at him and his incompetence. A court jester who was somehow king and whose own throne was slowly killing him as if it was rejecting him. But we soon learned that he was aware of his foolishness and ineptitude and was trying his best. That self-awareness and Viserys' good intentions, even if they usually didn't work out until the very end, made him such a human character. Also, his constant disappointment in that he and his family were never measuring up to what was expected of them by history. And he, of course, is a big fan of history. Bottom line, he was the dad of House of the Dragon, spending hours with his model city in his room and just wanting what was best for all his children, biological and his subjects. Wow, at the end of the day, a kind parent who, despite their immense flaws, still tries their best for you and sacrifices so much, that's haunting, as it was on this show. Also, the writers gave him so many fantastic scenes, and he delivered. Paddy Considine delivered. We're talking the hunt, the rehearsal dinner, eating that chicken. He's like, God damn it, I paid for all this. He was quite the father of the bride. One last time on the throne. Wow, what a sequence. And then that final family dinner. And his deathbed, both times, when he was talking to Alicent and then when he finally passed. Wow! again, the heart of House of the Dragon, and his absence on this show will be felt. And that should make Viserys feel good, because as you might recall, the king was worried about his legacy. I don't know how they're going to replace him next season. I'm curious to see who fills that void. They said they're going to slow down a little bit on the time jumps, which is good. I'm very curious to see who emerges to hold this whole show together. Well, I guess no one is going to hold it together, which is why they're in civil war. Viserys, we miss you. All right, so that's my ranking of the top 10 characters of House of the Dragon Season 1. Again, share your own down below and your thoughts on mine. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.